Sup? It's Greggatron. Good morning, and I hope you like my shirt. Yeah, Officer Tatum. Yeah. Alright, I got an interesting topic today. This video is about muscle memory. So, for any of my gym goers out there, I want to know what you guys think. Do you think muscle memory is a real thing? And I'm talking about this because I saw a clip of Dorian Yates talking to Joe Rogan, and he was talking about how he was 260 pounds of lean muscle at one point, and then theoretically, if he stopped for 10 years or so, he could get that weight back in like a year if he really tried. Well, then he goes on about how Arnold did something similar to that. So Arnold was pretty big in the 70s, right? Well, then when he got into movies, in certain roles, certain movies, he had to get smaller, like from 240 or 50 pounds down to like 200, 210. Well, then Arnold came back to bodybuilding in the 80s, and he was big again. Not as big as he was in the 70s, but still. His body was able to respond in such a way as if he almost never left the gym. Now, was he in the same condition as he was in like 75? Not really. Not from the 80, but still. I think it's interesting. Because do y'all think once your body makes a certain amount of gains, it's now programmed into your DNA? I think that's really fascinating. And one of the first things I thought about when I watched that clip was years ago I heard somebody say you can actually alter your metabolism based off of what you eat. And not even so much how you train, but more so how you eat, meaning when you're younger, if you have a good diet, your metabolism will be on point. And if you keep that type of diet, you'll pretty much stay that way for much longer in your adulthood. So basically, eat right when you're young because you're actually changing your metabolism into adulthood. So I'm like, wow, I wonder if that's like the same concept as DNA. But that's super cool. Like, what if, and it kind of makes sense because let's say you made gains as a young person and then you stop and then you want to do it again. Wouldn't your body naturally wake up to that? Because your body would already be familiar with making gains. So like, as long as you don't have an injury or something like that, wouldn't your body want to make gains? And that reminded me of myself, not to compare myself to Arnold and Dorian Yates, but I talked about this weeks ago. I hadn't trained in 2 weeks because I was working overtime. I was doing different things on the job. Well, when I did go back in the gym after 2 weeks, my body welcomed it and my body wanted it. God said it, I want it. So my body was like excited when I was going back to the gym. And furthermore, when I did go into the gym, I got big, like all over again. But when you don't use the weights, when you don't lift, the body will shrink because you're not using them. But once I go back in, I blow up again like I never lost weight. You know what I'm saying? So I kind of think it's like anything else. If you don't use it, you lose it. And then I reminded myself of it's like a mental thing, like art or music. If you don't play your guitar or whatever, you'll lose that ability after a certain point. But I think at the same time, it's like a bicycle. I think once you start drawing again or playing music again, I think naturally it'll come back to you. So I'm like, man, that's so fascinating. That is so fascinating. So therefore, I think when you're old, let's say you're like 70 years old, 80 years old, obviously you're not going to look the way you looked in your 30s and 40s. But I think if you were healthy back then, for one, you're going to be healthier now opposed to had you not been healthy back then. You're not going to be 600 pounds. My point is, the fact that you were healthy back then gives you a better shot when you are an old person. And if and when you do want to, do some weights, some little dumbbells, some cardio, your body will still welcome that. As long as, like I said, you're not injured or something like that, you don't have something serious going on. I think the human body is a fascinating thing. And I think even as an old person, potentially your body could welcome that type of physical activity. It could be walking in the park, it could be walking the dog, it could be anything. As far as the muscle memory thing goes, I'm like, that is so fascinating. And it made me think, wow, so if this is true, which I don't know if it's true, but if it is true, that really means you don't have to work out constantly. Like, I was already listening to Mike Menser about train for one day, take 4 days off, train again, take another 4 days. He'd do these 4-day gaps. He'd do upper body, take off for 4 days, lower body, take off for 4 days, back and forth. But as far as resting goes, it might even go deeper than that. If this whole muscle memory thing exists, you can take off. Like I said, I took off for 2 weeks. I've taken off longer than that in the past without training and still bounce back. So if this muscle memory thing is real, that means you could take full advantage of your rest. I mean, full advantage. And I was talking to a guy at work about something similar to this a couple years back. And he was telling me he trains once a week or once every 2 weeks or something, because he works a lot too. So he told me when he just trains on the weekend, and when he does, he just goes hard. I'm like, yeah, that sounds kind of like me. As long as you go hard when you do go, that's all you need. You don't have to spend 16 hours in the gym. But yeah, muscle memory, I'm going to look into it. I'm going to do some research. Like, what if you could actually reprogram your DNA into making gains? It's kind of like being fat, right? You know how when I was a kid, I thought being fat just means you were overweight, but no. When you're obese, your cells actually expand. Your actual cells. Well, then I wondered, well, if that's the case, then how do you lose weight if your cells are already obese? If your cells inside your body are fat, how do your cells get smaller again? These are things I used to wonder. So, honestly, I don't know the answer to that question. But as far as the muscle thing goes, doesn't that mean your cells would be bigger as well, as far as musculature goes? But it does make sense. If you made gains in the past, your body is capable of doing so because you already did it. That means you have the capacity to make gains. Another example I want to say, I've seen videos where a guy like lost an arm, or somebody was born with no legs or something like that, and these guys are still climbing ropes and doing rock climbing, and skiing and different things of that nature, swimming. Or there's a video of a guy who's bench pressing with one arm. He only has one arm, right? So in those cases, their bodies have already adapted because they don't have a choice but to adapt. So, do you think in conditions like that, the human body has already genetically adapted? You know how they say when you lose your sight, your hearing gets better, or when you lose your hearing, your sight gets better, or whatever? Do you think it's the same thing when it comes to muscle mass or muscle memory? Like, if you have no legs, do you think your arms will automatically be stronger because they have to be stronger? Therefore, genetically, you have strong arms now. It's like whatever weakness you have, turn the opposite into a strength. Which, that's not even what this video is about. That's a different topic. Huh. Anyway, shout out to Dorian Yates. Shout out to Arnold for provoking thought. And I think that's all I got for you. But I'll see you in the next video. I'll talk to y'all later. Peace.